Hi class, my name is Dr. Kennedy Paron, and today we'll be discussing heredity and the environment and nature versus nurture. So we will be discussing the difference between genotypes and phenotypes. So what is heredity? Heredity is how traits are passed down. And if we recall, heredity also leads to the traits we exhibit. So what is the reaction range? This is the variability of the expression of inherited traits and how they are influenced by environmental factors as well as genetic factors. So what exactly is a genotype then? So genotypes are genetic forms or constitutions of a person determined by the heredity. So how our genes form and impact how we look and our different traits, where phenotypes are the actual form or constitution of a person determined by heredity of the environmental factors. So then we'll discuss what is canalization. So canalization is the tendency of growth rates to return to genetically determined patterns by undergoing environmentally induced changes. So this leads to the development and presentation of traits, both physical and psychological, that a person inherits from their parents. So there are some environmental restrictions, however. This could be like scarcity of food, low birth weight, need of resources unavailable. Unfortunately, if there's a scarcity of food, a child that is genetically predisposed to be taller or bigger may not be. They might be underweight. This can stop children from growing and stunt their growth. If a need for food becomes available, many children end up snapping back once they get the needed resources into their genetically provided heights and weights. So then there are genetic and environmental correlations. So this is nature versus nurture. There is something called passive genetic environmental correlation. This is the correlation between what we are predisposed to genetically from our parents and the environments in which a child is raised. Next, we'll discuss evocative genetic environmental correlation. This is the correlation between what the child is genetically endowed with and the response from which the child is elicited from other people. And then there is active genetic environmental correlation. This is the correlation between a child's genetics and the choices the child makes in environment that they will seek. There is also something called niche picking. This is choosing the environmental conditions that foster one's genetically transmitted abilities and interests. So this is picking a positive environment in which you can thrive. We next talk about epigenesis. This is the view that development reflects conditional bidirectional exchanges between one's genotype and one's environmental conditions. So this is when the environmental conditions factor well with the genotypes that we are given. So how do you think researchers sort out the effects of genetic and environmental influences on development? So are the traits that we receive related? There's one study I'd like to bring up. This is the kinship study. So this is in your book. So this goes over the genetic environmental factors on trait development. So we may be predisposed to some traits. However, the environment also plays a factor. So nature and nurture. So there is a greater relation between more genes and traits shared by parents. So if a parent has a personality type and physical traits, we are more than 50% likely to overlap in those traits with our parents. There's also some studies on twins and genetics. So first we're going to talk about monozygotic twins. This is identical. They share 100% of DNA, where dizygomatic twins are fraternal and they share 50% of genes that overlap. So the monozygotic twins are more likely than dizygotic twins to actually have autism, schizophrenia, and other disorders as opposed to their dizygotic twin counterparts. You might wonder what autism spectrum disorder is. So I happen to work in clinic with a lot of children with autism, as I am a clinical supervisor for children with autism in their cases for their education with behavioral health therapy. So this is actually a developmental disorder characterized by failure to socialize with others, communicate effectively with others. They have large intolerances to change and very much have ritualistic behavior consistent with OCD patterns. So a child might have to count how many times they rotate the doorknob before entering. They may have to take 3 steps forward and 2 jumps back because that's part of the ritual in movement. They might also be fixated on different foods and have different textural and food things that they do not want, are very appalled by, such as foods that don't fit within their few comfort foods. Maybe they want to eat mac and cheese, for example, but will not touch the green beans because it could be a textural thing or out of their comfort zone. There are also some studies on adoption, nature versus nurture. So this would compare behavior of a child adopted by the parents versus spending time with their bio parents. So in this study, one sibling stayed with their biological parent and the other was adopted out to different parents. This is not ethical today. However, these studies used to be done. A lot of people said some personality traits were due to nature and genetics and overlapped between the two children, whereas nurture defined different characteristics and personality between the two children who had total genetic, same mom, same dad, total genetic makeup similarities. However, traits and genes differed in reflection to personality. And next we will go to chapter 2, section 4.